It's time for some real talk on fake clinics. Pro-choicers, you're probably going to want to hear what I'm about to say. Pro-lifers, you probably need to hear what I'm about to say. I have volunteered in the past at 2 different pregnancy resource clinics, the things that are now, thanks to the Lady Parts Justice League, being coined as fake clinics. I've also been a client at one of these fake clinics, and the thing that I think is missing in this dialogue is we're not a monolith. I mean, they're not all the same. It's not like Planned Parenthood, where you have just one big umbrella, you have one chain that operates in the same way. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about exactly what some of these clinics are and what they aren't. So first of all, the 2 that I volunteered at, I was around 18, 19 at the time, they were both church-run centers. And these were Protestant organizations. They were funded not by the federal government at all, but by local church charities. The first one was kind of out in a suburb, actually nowhere near an abortion clinic, and a majority of the women we saw were not even really abortion vulnerable. They came there knowing full well what was being offered. It was diapers and wipies and parenting classes. It was a free pregnancy test, and we had a connection to a sonographer at a local doctor's office. So it was not full-range medical care by any stretch of the imagination, but it also wasn't advertised that way. Now, I will say the main issue that I had with this particular pregnancy center at the time, I was Protestant. They make you sign a I believe it's like called an agreement of faith, and basically the idea is that you will share, the gospel at some point during a meeting with this woman. Now, where I think that gets a little bit tricky, and I believe it's a bad practice, honestly, that we need to stop doing, is you take a woman in. She's in a really vulnerable spot, especially if she's there for a free pregnancy test. And the idea is that you would kind of feel her out, ask her how she's doing, see how everything's going. And then you would take her back. It was a self-administered pregnancy test because this is volunteer run. It's peer counseling, not trained professionals. You take her back and you have her, pee in a cup, do the little dropper thing, administer her own pregnancy test, and then you would say, okay, this is gonna take a few minutes, we're gonna go back to the room, and I just wanna feel you out a little bit more and kind of talk about some of your options. Now, again, when someone calls one of these centers, many of them will not be clear about the fact that they don't provide abortion services. But it's probably actually not as much for the reason that most people think. They think we're trying to trick women to get them in there. But a lot of times you have girls who are being pressured by either an adult in their life or by the partner. And so if that person is sitting right next to them and, basically coercing them to go to an abortion clinic, it's best for us just to say, you know what, why don't you come in and we can talk to you about your options. Because at that point we can let her know if you're going to be kicked out of your house, if you don't have health care, all of these are things that we are able to help facilitate and get you connected with the proper resources. So it's not so much about tricking women, it's just making sure that they truly know what all of their options are. But again, back to being in the clinic or in the center with the woman. She's just done the self-administered test. You take her back to the room. This is one of the things I have an issue with. A lot of these centers will then do their, spiel about the gospel, right? And kind of introduce this concept to the women and say, do you have any type of faith? Is there anything, that we could pray with you about? And at that point, if you're a girl who's really scared that she's pregnant and you're desperate and you don't want to be pregnant, you're very inclined probably to say, you know what, I've never believed in God before, but I'll believe in him now if he can get me out of this. And that's a double-edged sword. Because if you are someone of faith and you do convince a woman then to, become quote-unquote saved, which is a Protestant term, by the way, that's why I did differentiate, because many Catholic centers and clinics do not do this model at all, since I'm pretty sure you have to go through classes to become confirmed and Catholic, but Protestantism is a little bit easier. You say a prayer and you get to go to heaven, I think. So anyway, the idea is that she says this prayer, right? Well, if you take her back to that pregnancy test and it's positive, then screw your God. Like, you've probably done just as much spiritual damage to her at this point because he let her down in her time of need. And I just found this whole practice kind of manipulative. And then at the end of the day, we would do this kind of debriefing and talk about the women that we met with and, you know, how many saves you had. But a lot of times they weren't even talking about, you know, again, an abortion vulnerable woman. It was more, who did you share the gospel with that actually accepted? That is also why you don't get a lot of secular women who are volunteering at these clinics. Even though we have so many women in the secular community that want to help out in these clinics, they're not going to sign a faith statement. They're not going to share the gospel with women. They just want to help. But again, because so many of these organizations are church funded, they're not going to bring someone in who wouldn't be willing to go along with that part of the plan. Okay, so that brings me to the next center that I actually ended up being a client at. It was a Catholic Charities run center, and found out I was pregnant with my daughter, didn't have insurance, and had just done the P-stick test, but wanted to actually confirm the pregnancy and get a sonogram done. So I contacted this place. I went into the facility. They actually share a wall here in Dallas with one of our abortion clinics. And so when you get there, there are not aggressive protesters out front at all. There are peaceful sidewalk advocates out front. And so, you know, they'll walk up to you and say, hey, do you know that you have other options? And, you know, very peacefully, gently kind of try to get women to come to this other center. I actually really like their model, how they work. So when you walk in, it's a nice, quaint little office space. There's, I think, like a cross, crucifix, whichever one it is, on the wall. They have a couple pamphlets about faith. That's it. That's the only faith talk there is. I want to say that when I filled out a questionnaire, it might have asked me, you know, is there anything you'd like for us to pray for you about or something like that. But that was it. I went back, I received my sonogram. It was kind of, you know, a very medical grade facility that was set up there. Nice machine, nice equipment, everything about it was much different than a place that just is doing the P-stick test and proselytizing. But again, all of these get lumped together because of the campaign that Lady Parts Justice League currently has set up that is calling out all, you know, quote unquote fake clinics. So they all get lumped together, that all pregnancy centers and pregnancy clinics are the same. They're not. And the ones receiving federal grants actually do provide medical grade services. Like I said, the ones that were Protestant and expected you to evangelize were actually funded by churches. So for them, it was a you know, act of evangelism and a service they were offering to the community. But it was not, I would say, in any way comparable to a federally qualified health center or anything like that. So these are just a few of the differences, and again, the entire kind of genre of pregnancy centers are very different, not a monolith at all. So I've only experienced a couple different models, and I think that with this campaign attacking pregnancy centers, the pro-life movement has a couple options. They can deny that we have fake clinics. You know, I wouldn't call any of them fake, but I would say that there are definitely ones that are, you know, at different levels of medical grade care, and others that are more kind of resource centers for women where they can come in and get the assistance that they need. You know, if they do have an unplanned pregnancy and they need a little bit of support, these are wonderful places offering that to the community. But when it comes to us, you know, fighting that and saying we're not fake clinics and look at all these services, I have a really good friend who runs a large clinic actually out in California, and NARAL and NOW came out there and sidewalk chalked that it was a fake clinic and not to trust them, and they're not going to tell you about abortion. And it's just not true. They know that women have other options. Their whole initiative is to put forth nonviolent options and the ones that actually offer support. If we look at every clinic, even Planned Parenthood, they don't offer myriad of services that we would like for them to. Where are their mammogram machines? Where is their prenatal care? Many of them don't offer anything other than abortion. So these clinics actually set out to supplement a lot of those other services that women are not receiving. But again, we can either pretend like nothing's wrong, or as a pro-life community, we can look at this critically and say, you know what? Is Lady Parts Justice League onto something? Are they pointing out ways that we can improve the services that we're offering? Are there ways that we can be loving women in our community better? And I would argue that there are. So there's a really cool initiative right now called the Pro Women's Health Consortium. And the idea behind this is actually to certify health clinics. They go into these facilities, they see the services that you offer, and they give you a seal of approval if you offer services that not only help women during pregnancy, but also when they're not pregnant. Because again, this isn't just about the babies, this is about the ladies too. Like, we want to make sure that we're helping women as well. So that could be STD screening, that could be cervical exams, breast exams, any of these other services. And so if you offer pregnancy care plus other services, then you get this seal of approval. And if you have a center that maybe only really does focus kind of on pregnancy counseling, but maybe you have a sonogram machine, or maybe you have an OB that you work in connection with, they can help you then get your center up to a medical grade clinic, which is really, really cool. So again, it's not a matter of bashing these clinics and saying they're fake, but saying, how can we help you do more for women in your community? And I think that that is a win-win for all of us. I will say there's a lot of centers who are apprehensive because they're volunteer run and they're donor based, and they can't imagine fitting anything else into the services that they already offer. That's okay too. I think where we have to be careful is lumping everyone together and saying that all pregnancy centers are equal. They're not. They're just not. And I think that the best way for us to fight this whole fake clinics campaign against pregnancy resource centers is to get out in front of it and acknowledge that we're not all the same, but tell our communities what we are offering. Be very clear and honest about what we offer and what we don't offer. That's just my 2 cents.